co-founders of AI Consensus. To start, could you share a little bit about your background and how you got to founding AI Consensus?
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to be here. So I'm currently a senior at Minerva University. I'm studying economics and sociology. And I founded AI Consensus with some of my classmates in February last year. And that was when AI was really starting to disrupt higher education. Yeah, and so a lot of our thinking around the time was that we saw AI as something that could really benefit learning. And for a lot of us, the motivation has always been about learning and how we can make education better. And we saw a lot of voices and narratives around how AI was harmful and how we should sort of ban it. And it's this game of cat and mouse almost. And you know, I think some of that has a lot of validity, and the ways in which it can harm learning are very real, and we should be careful about them. But I also think that it's an incredible tool which can really elevate curiosity and passion and sort of let us like learn in ways which we haven't before. And we also felt that this was a chance to just reconsider what it meant to learn because of how much it was disrupting existing institutions. And so we started this organization to try to work on some of these things.
Yeah, so it sounds like you guys are kind of not going up against the educational institution, but maybe going up against some of the more conservative kind of ways of thinking in education. I'm curious, can you share some of the challenges and on the flip side, successes you guys feel like you've had just in kind of promoting that, you know, message of AI can be used for positive things in learning?
Yeah, I mean, when we go and talk to, I think, the average person or like a student or an educator or someone who's a stakeholder, it's the message is usually very positive. On that individual level, I think it's not hard to see the ways in which that AI can really benefit one's learning. But the struggles are sort of more institutional. And because when you talk about the level of a classroom or an institution, you got to make sure that there's policies and guardrails in place so that this technology doesn't get used in a bad way. So initially we were actually trying to work on an institutional level, and we found a lot of friction. And so we decided to sort of pivot away from that and more towards the individual level. And so that's what we've been focusing more on recently.
So share a little bit more about like what actively the work that you guys do looks like.
Yeah, so another focus for us is getting the student more involved. And so I'm a student, and my co-founders are students. And so we're focused on both creating resources and opportunities for students to share out and try to promote more student engagement in the space in general. And so we believe that students have a larger role to play within the conversation of AI in education, and we're trying to have students be more prominent.
That's great. So I had recently gone to one of your events and I had a great time, but for folks who might not have been there, could you share a little bit about the structure of the last event that you hosted, what you feel like you guys got out of it?
Yeah, and so I guess actually I didn't really answer the last question, but yeah, we've been doing a bunch of events around, and this was one that you got to attend. And the idea of these events is to bring together a lot of different stakeholders to be able to explore a question together. And particularly making sure that the stakeholder of the student is there and really featured. And so it's seeing the student as someone with autonomy and agency, and someone who's able to have thoughts about their own learning and take actions in order to ensure that their own learning is going well, essentially. So we had at this event that you were at, this one was focused on reasoning AI and this idea that if AI can reason, what does that mean for learning? So we had some nice panels, but and then some breakouts. I think the star of the event was really the debate, because that was a chance for students to actually just really talk it out and be in a sort of official position to try to speak from a place of authority about this, but also be able to bring in their own experiences
Yeah.
and opinions. And that was just really magical to see.
Definitely, yeah. Something I loved. So if I remember correctly, the question of the debate was, will AI make us smarter?
Yeah, that's right.
And we ended up having like a few people from each breakout group get nominated and go up as a debater. Half were for, half were against. What do you think, I mean, either as it relates to the individual student experience with AI or just more broadly, what do you think are a couple of the key takeaways that surprised you from the event? Were there any points that people made that you wouldn't have expected to hear or that you were particularly excited by?
Yeah, actually, there are two things that I think come to mind right now. One is something that came up actually in the signups for the event. And this is something that, because I got to sort of see beforehand, we had a short section in the signups just asking if they had any questions for the panel. And someone mentioned about how AI would harm expertise. And so this got me thinking about this idea that with tools like AI, which present with so much confidence, as someone reading that, it's easy to come away thinking you know more about a subject than you actually do. And in that way, you end up going and making false claims that you can't really back up. Or you present with more confidence than you actually should. But at the same time, it works on both sides because AI can help you learn so much quicker. And it can work as such an effective thought partner that can also help you develop expertise much quicker.
So it sounds like what I'm getting from what you just said, which I loved, is that it really comes down to like the depth of learning that someone has when they're engaging with AI. So when you think about the kind of recommendations you might offer to young people who are trying to figure out, you know, picture someone who's only ever used ChatGPT to like write an essay for them. When you're thinking about that person and what ideally they would need to have in terms of a relationship with AI, what are some of the things they need to think about in terms of how they're using it, how they're learning about it?
I think the most important thing for me is just to stay curious. Because AI is a tool that can really help you explore topics very quickly and pick up skills very quickly, but it's also an easy way out sometimes. It can make sort of mundane tasks that you might not want to do easier. And so that's why I think it's just so important to remember the beauty of learning and the curiosity that I think drives it. So I'd say that when you're using these tools, just remember that try to follow threads that make you curious and don't think of it as just a tool.
Have there been any ways in which you've kind of explored AI either creatively or in your learning process that stand out to you as like, that's an example of putting that into practice? Like, have there ever been times where you're either playing around with it or using it to help you as a thought partner, you had said?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think this one's been around for a while, but I love the idea of debating with AI. And so I've been taking some philosophy classes recently, and it's just been really fun to explore ideas. And when we have readings for a class, you can very easily put that into the GPT and have it take on sort of a persona from the reading or the author of the paper. And then it doesn't have to be a debate as much as a discussion, but I found it really helps me get nuance into how I feel about the position and also to understand what that author thinks. And then what I think the GPTs are also very good at doing is they have such a wide knowledge base and they're able to formulate it in presentable and effective ways. So whereas all this information is on Google, it's able to synthesize it in a very digestible way.
Here's what you need to,
and so it's a good way to find, to give context around papers and readings, and also to connect them to things that you care about.
So it sounds like you're building like a really healthy and also just the skill of being able to engage with AI in a deep way. I guess one question that comes to mind is, as you think about how you're moving into the workforce more broadly, what aspects of those kind of skills do you think might serve you as you become a worker? And in what ways? Like, you know, like are there particular applications of AI? Are there particular skill sets as it relates to AI that you think are gonna come into that future of work context for you?
Yeah, so for skills with AI, I think I still just think that the curiosity bit is really important.
Absolutely.
And because sometimes when I think about engaging with AI, something that's really helpful is to just really pretend it's another person.
Yeah.
In the same way that when you interact with someone, it's really important how you phrase your questions, and your thinking is as just important as your engagement with that person.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the same core skills remain. And so
I like that.
because these tools can accomplish so much, essentially the individual is now able to accomplish, I think, maybe exponentially more than they could in the past. And so that means thinking differently about what kind of roles you want to be in, but then also just being able to treasure more of the curiosity and the passion behind the projects that you want to do.
That's awesome. So I know that the San Francisco event wasn't the only city that you guys have hosted, and I know the group has done, I think I saw in Taipei and Paris.
Right.
That looked so cool. So one thing I'm curious about is, are there some strong themes that you feel like are standing out from all of the events that are overlapping? Like, is there something that is standing out to you that is consistent across all of the different cities you've hosted in, or are there differences because of the different international perspectives at the table?
Yeah, that's a really fascinating question. So today we've hosted in San Francisco. We just had one in Taipei. That was actually 2 days ago. We had one in Paris, and we've hosted in Prague, Warsaw, and London. And I think a theme that comes across is just that when you give students the space to speak out and sort of push them a little bit, force them to go a little bit into the spotlight, but not too high consequences, really beautiful things come out. And that students just, in the right environments, they can contribute in very meaningful ways and have very nuanced opinions about this. So that's just been really nice encouragement for us to keep going and to realize that we really should bring out more of the student voice. Something that's been interesting that's different across the cities is actually just sort of the AI literacy. And San Francisco is a place which I think maybe has the highest AI literacy maybe in the world.
I would imagine, honestly,
Right, just because
we're surrounded by it,
And so it's interesting, we did an event in San Francisco last summer, and then 6 months later we did an event in London. And talking to some of the participants, it was really interesting how it felt like their understanding of AI was almost the same, even though that in London you sort of like 6 months later and more time to the Justice office.
So it's almost like London had finally caught up to where San Francisco had been, perspective-wise.
But it was also, I think the education scene felt stronger in London, and so there was more of a focus on education, whereas in San Francisco people wanted to talk more about tech.
So it's kind of that innovation versus education focus. That's really interesting. So looking ahead, you mentioned you guys are super motivated to continue doing these events. As you look into 2025, if you could nail it down to one big impact you guys can make with your work, what do you think it would be?
I would like it be more commonplace and more of a normal thing for teachers and administrators and sort of policymakers to think about the role of the student when they think about these big questions around AI and education. And we hope to do that through doing more of these events, and also through giving more of a platform, more official platforms to students. And so we want to work on, right now we're working on publishing student essays and getting the student opinion more out there.
So share a little bit more about that just real quick. Like what is, so I mean, obviously getting the student opinion out there, but did you have any really specific goals for the essay contest as an idea? What questions you specifically asked them to respond to?
So the goal of the essay contest is to just encourage students to speak out more, and show that when they do, it can have both impacts and also be beneficial for themselves. So our current one is very broad. It asks students to just write 400 words, and essentially just to make a claim, to show that as a student you can have your own opinions, much like we're taught to do in schools, and contribute in meaningful ways to this discussion.
Absolutely.
and yeah, we're excited to explore this topic in more sort of specific areas, and also to try to experiment with more long form formats as well.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see how all this goes. And
Me too.
I think you had mentioned there's like a stipend, so the students who are winning the contest are going to be compensated for their work.
Yeah, so the idea is that once we have these, we'll select up to 10, and then we'll publish them on our website, and we're working with some publishers to get coverage on this, so that way, we spread the word more. And we also have the $200 stipend set up for anyone who has things who's selected.
Awesome. So something that I really love about what you guys are doing is, one, you're giving young people and students a forum to make their voices heard. But I think another kind of side benefit that you guys might not even intended to have is that through things like essay contests and facilitated debates, like, students are honing skills that are going to be really important as they get older. Having participated in that debate, I was like, wow, I don't remember the last time I used my brain that much. It's things like that I think are really exciting to see with your work. So I'm excited. And aside from the essay contest, you guys are moving forward. Are you planning any other specific events or work?
Yeah, we're planning more events in San Francisco over the next couple months. We're also working with our team. We'll be in Seoul in the coming months. I think we'll be doing something there as well. And we're trying to expand this model, and part of what you said is about sort of being a space where students can develop skills and take on opportunities that they wouldn't get to otherwise.
Yeah.
And that's also part of what we want to do. We're trying to be a space where we can help other students and young people take on initiatives of their own. And so we hope to try to experiment that more and develop more chapters of AI consensus.
Awesome. What do you think are some things that educators could do right now to better listen to or prepare their students for that future of AI?
I think it's a tough one, because I think there's so much pressure on both educators and students to sort of perform their roles within this education landscape, and both are so busy, and there's just so much going on in both their lives. But I think it's really just, again, remembering why learning is so important to us. And I think for a lot of educators, it's true that they're in this because they believe in learning as sort of theory of change. That it can be a very meaningful way to have impact on people's lives. And the act of teaching in itself can be very fulfilling. And so to remember that, this is what AI can enable us to do, and to have conversations with that as a sort of starting point.
Yeah. So I mean, two things that I kind of took away from that is, one, meeting people where they're at.
Right.
And then two, that kind of understanding of, as opposed to being threatened by this new technology, think about the ways in which it could integrate with the learning model to make it better.
Yeah.
That's great. And so then kind of on the flip side, because a lot of our media's intended audience is folks like us, but also folks who don't have the exposure that we do around AI. We're in the heart of the Silicon Valley, so we're exposed to AI. We've both gone to four-year universities. We've been in that kind of classroom learning context that gave us a lot of the skills that enabled us to kind of adapt to AI. So young people of all backgrounds, if you're thinking about someone who might have gone to university, but also someone who might not have, what is some advice you might give them beyond staying curious as they're entering the workforce, who are kind of concerned about AI impacting their lives? What would you say to the folks who are feeling fearful of it? Because the curiosity is incredible and it's key, but beyond that, what are some more things that they might be able to think about, or some frameworks you might recommend that they think about AI?
Yeah, I think that's an amazing question. I think AI as a concept can be a bit nebulous sometimes. It's this idea of intelligence. It's a bit threatening, because it says that there's something that will take away what makes humans so special. And if that's there, then what's left for us, right? But when it sort of comes down to it, and when you look at the research around the economics of AI and integration of technology into societies, it usually ends up being a lot more nuanced than this. And actually, I think what happens in most sectors is that AI complements rather than replaces. And so it's just really, it'll be really dependent, like specific, depending on what kind of industry and what kind of role and what kind of tasks. But I think in most of these cases, there's so much room left for humans to grow, and there's also ways in which AI will open up new opportunities that didn't exist before. So I think it's just keeping this as a factor very much in mind, but being optimistic about it and being excited and trying to find the spots in which you can work with AI rather than seeing it as a force that competes purely against you.
So it's like you're getting at that kind of core of human AI collaboration.
Right.
Yeah. I think all of that stuff, because it's interesting to go into this new world of AI without having a blueprint for what human AI collaboration looks like. But to your point, our generation has an opportunity to write the blueprint. Like we get to decide what this could look like. So it's what you were saying before. Completely agree. There's opportunity there. It's terrifying, but there's opportunity.
Yeah, and I'll say that there is maybe more of a blueprint than there's not necessarily like a to the exact dot blueprint, but I think there's been a good amount of research actually looking at the capabilities of AI and trying to match that to how that will impact the specific workforce. And so there are definitely research papers out there that can that project sort of which skills will become more or less important over time.
For sure. Yeah, I think then the task of groups like ours is like, how do we make that accessible to people? Yeah.
And I because I remember this now. I think the two that are sort of highlighted most are strategic thinking and interpersonal sort of skills. And so interpersonal skills, I think, makes a lot of sense because even
what
if
robots can't do,
exactly, no, you're exactly right. It's even if it can do all these intellectual feats, there's some human experiential elements to life that are so very much unique to us.
Absolutely.
And so having the ability to empathize and to feel joy, those are things which will probably become more important actually, in the age of AI.
Absolutely.
And the other one is just doing strategic thinking, and so like focusing more on, especially in novel situations where AI does not have data, the human is often so much better at figuring out how to navigate these situations. And so as we think about like how AI and humans interact, that's very much also strategic projection.
And I mean, I think something that I'm also coming to mind for me is also that coming back to that point about curiosity. I remember a very wise man once told me, like, you learn the most in moments where you're uncomfortable. And I think AI brings so much discomfort to all of the institutions and structures that we've kind of grown up with. And so it's about learning to embrace the change and kind of not dig your heels in the past, but rather look ahead and think about, what can I make with what's being presented to me now?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, that was all the questions I have. Is there anything else that you want to share, either about the work you personally are doing or what AI Consensus is going to be doing in the future? If not, totally.
I mean, I think that just if you're a student who's listening to this, I would encourage you to just think more about this yourself, and that the student's experience, I think, as someone who's going through learning where AI is disrupting this and where AI can both benefit and hinder your learning, is a really valuable one. And I wish that students would share more of it. And so, I mean, we have lots of opportunities to do so. And we have this essay contest coming up. So hopefully, maybe we can put a link to it or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we'd love for students to participate, and also for teachers to try to bring more of that out as well.
Encouraging the students. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Leo.
Thank you.
I'm so glad we got to talk about this. I'm sure we'll continue our conversations on camera, but
oh yeah.
All right, I think that's about it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
I think we did so good.
No, I was like, oh.